Over the last 5 to 10 years, Columbus residents have been noticing lots of change. Today on City Chat, many areas of Columbus are experiencing growth, and we're here today with Councilmember Shayla Favor and Development Department Director Steve Schoeny to talk about this growth and the changes we are seeing in the city of Columbus. Thank you both so much for coming onto the show and joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, and whenever I'm out of town and people ask me where I'm from, I'm just like super excited that I get to say that I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm always recommending that they should move here if they want to be happy, you know. And so, Director Schoeny, this question is for you. Why is there so much growth happening in Columbus, and are all these new people coming to Columbus because I recommended them to?
We've done surveys, and I think at least 75% of the people that are coming are all because you did such a great job with your elevator speeches and convincing folks to come here. So people are coming to Columbus for a couple different reasons. One is we have a fantastic set of universities that draw people into the city and draw people into the region. There are 150,000 post-secondary students enrolled in the Columbus region at any one time. So whereas other communities might have to attract people to their communities, our challenge is really to keep them. And so we do a great job of leveraging the universities, creating great places where people want to live, and then that helps us with our business attraction. So we've developed a virtuous cycle. It's not perfect. We always have challenges. But that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of folks, particularly from the Midwest, attracted into Columbus. And when you look at the region as a whole, you really see kind of Columbus, Indianapolis, and Chicago setting up as those places where talent is attracted to across a wide range of the income spectrum.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How fast is Columbus growing?
Yeah, so the Columbus region as a whole is expected to grow by about 50%. We're about 2 million people as a whole for the 11 county area right now. Over the next 30 years, we're expected to add another million, so to grow by 50%. And of that million, we project, or the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Council projects that about half of those folks will come into the city limits of the city of Columbus.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. Councilmember Favor, yes. What are your priorities as a newly appointed member, and can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to you?
Absolutely. So prior to my appointment to City Council, I worked as an assistant city attorney with the Columbus City Attorney's Office in a unique area that's known as the Zone Initiative. And the Zone Initiative's primary role is to abate public nuisance properties. So if you think of a residential property, your home, for example, if it falls into disrepair, windows are broken, your roof might need some repairs, and you fail to do those repairs, the city can compel the owner of the property to bring that property into compliance with the Columbus City Code. Some of the activity that we also were filing lawsuits against were people that were using their properties to conduct criminal activity. So if you think of something like drug activity or prostitution that happens in and around Columbus all the time in our gas stations, nightclubs, and even single family residential property owners, we can collect the evidence we need to through the assistance of the Columbus Police Department, file nuisance abatement actions, and the law allows us to have that property be boarded up, and that ceases that criminal activity for a certain amount of time, thus assisting in the city's efforts to clean neighborhoods up. And so that's what has driven me to be here today with you, that I want to continue that work throughout Columbus on a larger level. And so one of my top priorities is obviously housing. Housing in Columbus, if Director Schoeny is throwing those numbers out, and I've heard almost, correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps 80 to 85 people a day are moving into the city of Columbus, which is an astronomical rate. And so where are all those folks going to go? We need to figure out how we can provide affordable housing for everyone who is coming into our city, because everybody's not moving here to work for a Fortune 500 company, and we understand that. We've got students, we've got a very large immigration community as well. And so the city wants to be responsive to all of our residents.
Right. So what are some of the things that we can do to maintain affordable housing from the top of your head?
Absolutely. So this is a conversation that Director Schoeny and the Department of Development we're having as we speak. And so trying to figure out what is going to work best for Columbus. And I think that starts with accepting the fact that there is not a one-stop shop approach to affordable housing for the city of Columbus. We are a very neighborhood-driven city, and so you will find a lot of pride in every single neighborhood that you go into, whether it's Linden or the Hilltop or Far East. Every community operates differently, and we see that operation through our area commissions as well as our civic associations. And so through working with those key players in our communities, we're going to continue to have the conversation about what is best going to work for your community. And we want the city of Columbus's support as we continue to have this conversation around affordable housing.
People all around Columbus, and including myself, have noticed so many like new apartment buildings just all over the place. It seems like they just sprouted out. Why is this happening?
I think there are a couple reasons. One has to do with economics coming out of the financial crisis that we had late in the last decade. People changed, their financial situations changed, and home ownership became a lot more difficult for a lot of families. So that's one factor. Another factor is that you have smaller families demographically. You have two different cohorts coming through the housing system, where you've got the baby boomers that are aging out of their homes and looking to downsize. At the same time, you have millennials coming in to the marketplace. So you have a number of different factors that are coming in. And then the other thing that I would say is you have a lot of folks that are choosing places where they have a transportation choice. So where families and households can choose to live in a place where they can take a bus to work, or take an Uber to where they need to be, or take a bike or a scooter to where they want to get to. Having that transportation choice means living in a denser environment, which means living in maybe not a single family home, but in an apartment complex or a duplex, or various different kinds of housing options that allow people to live a little closer together so that they can take advantage of some of these things, some of these other amenities that come from living in a neighborhood where you have transportation choice.
And if I could add, I think that we're seeing this across the country, a generation of folks who want to live smaller. And so everyone's dream is not to own a single family residential property, 4,000 square feet with 2.5 bath, right? So we're seeing some of our younger folks, the millennials, that want to live in a tiny home, and that want to live in a 800 square foot apartment. And so we want to be responsive to all of our residents. And because we do have a very robust immigration community, understanding that cultural differences also drive our response to providing all different types of housing options. And so I think that we're doing what we need to do to ensure that we have an array of choices for people as it relates to housing.
Yeah, and for people who are homeowners, does this change anything? With all these new apartments, like, first of all, is there enough demand for those apartments, and what does it mean for current homeowners?
I think in terms of is there enough demand, the answer is yes. We're continuing to see, even when we're adding lots and lots of apartments and multifamily units, we're not seeing our vacancy rates rise. So there is demand for the product. In terms of what does it mean for homeowners, it's interesting. What we're seeing is a return to how our neighborhoods were really designed to operate in the first place. So if you look at a neighborhood like Linden, Linden's population today is probably about, gosh, I should know these statistics off the top of my head, but maybe 40 or 50% of what it was at its peak. And so the idea of returning these neighborhoods to a level of population that they were originally intended to function at is fantastic. So the idea of having really robust commercial corridors that have people living in a relatively dense environment, feeding the retail businesses along those corridors, bringing customers for those coffee shops and the dry cleaner and those businesses that are intended to serve a neighborhood. You need people in a neighborhood to support the businesses to support a neighborhood. And so it is changed. It's changed to think about, I may have a 5-story apartment building at the end of my street. But that change brings, that change that may be perceived initially as a negative change brings all of those other benefits with it. And it allows us to do things like move toward a transit system on some of our commercial corridors and be more efficient in terms of how we operate as a city.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That actually answered my next question. With HOA fees and residents that are kind of concerned about the growth in their specific neighborhoods, is there a way that you would, how would you respond to this, and what would you say are the benefits of a growing neighborhood?
Absolutely. If you have a growing neighborhood, a thriving neighborhood, then that continues to attract amenities, so to speak. And so people want to have options. You don't want to have to resort to traveling 20 minutes to get to an activity to do with your family, or to go to a movie theater or things of that nature. And some of it is just business, right? You have to have individuals present in order to support a grocery store, in order to support a thriving business. And so with individuals present in our communities, with the Department of Development doing an amazing job of continuing to attract businesses as well as residents into these already existing communities. We're not looking to change the aesthetic of our neighborhoods. We're looking to enhance them. And that does not mean a complete takeover or anything else drastic. It is only there. We are here to continuously, improve our existing neighborhoods. And so hopefully our residents can start to see positive changes happening in and around their communities.
This question is for both of you. How do you envision Columbus 30 years from now?
Oh, I don't know,
Rock,
about
paper,
30
scissors
minutes
together.
from now.
That's a great question, and I think that's a question that has to be a conversation for all of us in the community, first off. I think that's, we're in a great place as a community, that we are, unlike a lot of other cities in the Midwest and a lot of other cities in Ohio, we are growing. We're viewed as a city that is an exciting place to be for everybody in our city, and so we're attracting across the whole spectrum. We're attracting lots of folks. So, my vision for us as a city is a city that has, that it's a city of unique, vibrant, mixed-income neighborhoods that are stitched together by a transportation system that works for them. And we don't know what we don't know what that piece of it's going to look like. But what we do know is that what's important is having neighborhoods where everyone feels welcome, everyone can find their place, and they're great places that people want to live. And we think we can do that. We think we've got the bones in place, the infrastructure in place that allows us to do it. And one of the things that when I travel the country and go to conferences and I talk to my colleagues from around the country, one of the things where I feel truly blessed is that we have a community that comes together around that same concept of having a inclusive, welcoming city where everyone can move up and be an opportunity city for everybody. And I think as long as we're continuing to all move in that same direction with that same vision, I think we can get there.
Absolutely. Mayor Ginther reminds us all the time that we are the opportunity city. And I absolutely believe that we are at a place in our city's history where we can get this thing right. We have seen from examples across the country where cities have grown at the detriment of its communities, of its neighbors. And so our growth cannot be at the detriment of our vulnerable residents, our long-term residents. And so everybody that has a position, a seat at the table that is working round the clock to make sure that Columbus becomes the greatest city in the country, acknowledges that this is our time to get it right, that if we are truly the opportunity city, that this is our opportunity to show the rest of the country who Columbus is, what we're made of, and that this is an inclusive city for everybody. So what 30 years looks like to me, it's unwritten. And I think that part is exciting, that we are all taking part of writing Columbus's history moving forward.
Change is exciting, and Columbus is so lucky to have people like you, Councilmember Shayla Favor, and Director Schoeny. Just your guys' brain is able to just see like the bigger picture, and we really, I'm just having you on the show, it's just, I feel like really inspired and that much more proud to be from Columbus. So thank you both for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
To learn more about Columbus growth and housing affordability, please visit www.columbus.gov/development. Thanks for watching City Chat on CTV.